Happy Monday. Man, you think I would know what day it is. Nice to see you guys. Let's find a nice comfy seat. Yeah, nice comfy seat. Just let your body settle in. Feel the weight of each exhale as it releases off the shoulders. Little opportunity to continue shoulder release from yesterday's practice as we just breathe in and feel body settle here. Maybe let your eyes close. So there's this traveler roaming a endless forest. Forest he's been in for as long as he can remember. He's come across something new, something old, something new to him. The massive, worn and weathered, solid and sturdy concrete structure sitting in the middle of this forest where it seems remarkably out of place. Now start to feel the inhale portion of your breath and how that's filling the lungs, nourishing the body. Think about how that interplay of the inhale nourishing you and the exhale releasing you is impacting this moment, physicality of your body. We'll give ourselves just another 40 seconds here. When it feels appropriate, we'll let the eyes open if they're closed. Let's find our way to something where we can kickstand our arms. So, however the legs feel most comfortable, we want to have a kickstand of the arms, almost like kind of a half tabletop, half child's pose-esque. And we're going to play with a little cat-cow from this angle. So as you exhale, feel the chin tuck, feel the middle of the back round. Maybe I'll do this sideways. So you get that bowing sensation. And then as you inhale, think about the middle of your sternum coming forward and the belly rolling towards the front of your room, front of your space. And then exhale, we reverse. Inhale, we pull forward, sternum forward, belly arches, chin lifts. Exhale and reverse. And let's just move a few times here. Playing with this spinal articulation, flexion and extension. Also interplaying with the hips. And now if you do have your legs crossed, we'll reverse the front leg, the back leg. And continue the exploration of the spine. Give yourself just 30 more seconds to explore this movement. And when you feel ready, let's bring the spine back to neutral, then transition to tabletop, and then settle into child's pose, sinking the seat back towards the heels, letting the sternum and the thighs compress towards one another, letting the shoulders relax at the end of the shape so that you feel softness. Fingertips gripping into the mat. Let's pull ourselves forward to tabletop. Curl the toes underneath us and we'll lift the seat, lifting towards down dog. Get the weight and extension back into the hips. Really feel that link. And then just shift the weight forward to plank. And think about aligning the arm structure and then squeezing the glutes before we lift our way back and into down dog. And then coming up onto your tiptoes, let's walk our way or tiptoe our way to the front of a mat. Eventually releasing the heels and letting the forehead sink into your fold. Take a half lift. And then settle all the way back into your fold. Drift your awareness to your sacrum and we'll roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae. Landing in mountain. Settling into the strength, the structural or integrity of the shape. We'll bring our hands together, heart center. Keeping the fingerprints pressing towards one another and keeping the thumbs resting against the sternum. Let's slide our left foot straight back and into lunge. Smoothing into that anterior expansion of that left hip, left quad range. And keeping the hands together. So using a little bit more of that hip functionality, we'll slide our left foot back into mountain. We'll resettle, reland. Before we transition to the second side, right foot slides straight back. We land with that stability. Think about now the anterior sheath, that right quad, right hip. You push back into that right heel, keep that flexed strength in the right leg. And then hands staying together, we slide our way forward. Sweep the arms up and overhead, turn the palms towards the front of your room, and exhale through forward fold. Inhale into half lift. The top of your half lift, push the crown of your head out towards the front of the room. Keep the gaze straight down, but really elongate and see if you can feel a pull all the way into that lumbar lengthening. Then keep that length as you drop your way back into fold. Plant the hands. Think about the hand strength, the fingerprints, the finger mounds as you walk your way back into down dog. Get that full depth of down dog. And let's come down to hands and knees. Tabletop. We'll flip the tops of the feet and sink into child's pose. From child's pose, take your right hand to the lateral edge, outside edge of your left knee, so that the right elbow and right knee are roughly connected, and then the right hand and left knee are cupping. Take your left hand towards your left hip and roll that left shoulder up. So you have an anchored right arm, forearm, roll into this twist. Release back and find child's pose. Left hand comes across to the right knee. So left elbow, left knee are roughly connected. Right hand to the right hip, and we roll into that twist. Left arm providing the structure. And exhale back into child's pose. Fingertips gripping into the mat. Let's pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop. We'll curl our toes, lift our seat, and find down dog. Walk your way to the front of the mat. Inhale to half lift. Exhale back into fold. Slide the left foot straight back into lunge. Sweep your way up into crescent. A length of this shape here as the middle body expands. Exhale back into lunge and wiggle that left foot a little deeper into your shape. Splay the toes out on the right foot and sweep yourself back up into crescent. We want the strength of that right quad, but we want to remove the bend of that back knee so we're really strong in that back quad. Put the hands down on the mat and wiggle that left foot into just a little bit more depth. Make sure that right foot is supporting you, splayed toes, and we'll sweep ourselves up. Oh, one last crescent here. Keep that left quad active. Don't fall over. Put the hands down to the mat and we'll step the left foot forward. Inhale into half lift. And exhale back into fold. Right foot slides straight back. Sweep to crescent. Think about that middle body length, that middle body neutrality. And put the hands down to the mat. Wiggle that right foot back so you get just a little bit more length, and make sure you splay those toes on the left foot so we're active there. Sweep up. Really think about how we develop that strength in the back leg. Put the hands down to the mat. And one more time, we wiggle that right foot back, get that full length, sweeping ourselves up into this expanded crescent position. The left foot, the left toes splaying and holding us here. Hands drop to the mat, and we can step that right foot forward. Nice work. That's a big ask that early in practice. Inhale into half lift. The top of your half lift, extend the crown of the head. Exhale back into fold. Awareness to the sacrum. Let's roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae. And as we get into this top space, Squeeze the glutes to help compensate for all the openness we have in the anterior of the hips. Hands together at heart center. Really start to feel across that anterior hip crease. Just kind of feeling into the space we've created. And then think about that anterior hip crease retracting back as we work our way towards chair. And this is, instead of glutes back, it's anterior hip crease pulling back. Keeping that tibia, fibia vertical as that happens. Hip crease just continually hugging into the depth, hands staying at heart center. Drop the hands to the mat. And walk your way back into plank. And slowly, gently, delicately lower yourself down to the mat. Flip the tops of the feet, flex the quads so the kneecaps are elevated. And slide the hands onto your sacrum if that's accessible for your shoulder. If it's not, maybe just grab the sides of the pants. And then think about elevating the forehead maybe a millimeter off the mat. Don't lose the quad engagement and don't let the lumbar be overextended. And then relax. Slide your hands underneath your forehead for a little crocodile pose. And let's just breathe here for a moment. There's this massive stairway, like at the New York Library, from the forest floor up to this single giant iron door on this incredibly expansive concrete building in the middle of the forest. And above the iron door, there's this bronze plaque. And engraved in that plaque is the words, "The Library of Forgotten Stories." And this traveler starts to make his way up this staircase towards the door. And it's almost like the entirety of the forest goes silent as he does this. Let's slide our hands underneath our shoulders. We'll press ourselves up to hands and knees tabletop. And from hands and knees tabletop, let's push our left foot straight back so that the toe mound can engage there. We really want to catch the strength of our leg with that toe mound. And then we're just going to roll up into a little modified down dog. So you can see that we have that right knee bent. And then everything else would be a traditional down dog, right? It's just that we don't have a lot of weight in the right foot. Now we're going to slide the right foot up in between the hands, try to use some of that hip space we created, then ground the left heel and bring the right hand to the medial edge, big toe edge of the right foot before we roll that left arm up into a nice, long, expansive side angle. Think about that left oblique activating and squeezing as you pull yourself up into Warrior Two. And then just breathe here. Width across the hips as we're always kind of working, but think about all that anterior hip space that we've already offered and peel open into that. Then spin your left heel up and we'll find crescent, familiar shape for this practice. And float the hands down to the mat. And we'll step the right foot back into a traditional down dog before we come down to hands and knees tabletop. Flip the tops of the feet and sink back into child's pose. Inhale your way back into tabletop. And then send your right foot straight back. Right toe mound plants and anchors. It gives us that strength. We use that strength to lift up into this modified version of down dog. Kind of like a lame three-legged dog. And then we'll step the left foot forward in between the hands. Then ground our right heel. Bring our left hand to the medial edge, big toe edge of the left foot. And roll our way open into a big, long side angle. Think about that width across the shoulder girdle. Again, continuing that expansion from yesterday's practice. Right oblique activates, and we use that to tilt our way up into this big, wide warrior two. Think about that strength here, the capacity for openness. And then the right heel can spin up. We're back into crescent. Float the hands down to the mat. Step the left foot back into traditional down dog. Drop to tabletop. Sink to child's pose. Flipping the tops of the feet and settling back there. Take a round of breath or two here. Really think about landing. What it feels like to land here. And then let's pull ourselves forward to tabletop. Curl our toes, lift our seat, and find down dog. And we'll walk our way forward. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Drift your awareness to your sacrum. Let's roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae. Inhale the hands together, heart center. Settle into the balance of mountain. Lay the toes out on both feet. And then let's draw our left knee up into a little half Karate Kid. Think about bringing the quad parallel with the floor. Think about what's going on in that right hip. Is it trying to push out to the right side, or can you stay aligned there? And then send your right foot back into lunge, ground the right heel, and roll into warrior two. Slide back into your right hamstring just to activate that long posterior chain, and then refine two. We'll bring our hands together at heart center, and in one motion, we're going to put a nice little balance challenge in here. So we're gonna go back to half Karate Kid, right? So the right foot needs to be super planted and super strong. Then we'll just swing that left leg right back into that half Karate Kid. And then release the foot. Breathe. Think about splaying the toes, developing that balance before we even take the right leg up, right? We develop the balance, then we'll take that right leg into our half Karate Kid. We think about that lateral edge of the left hip staying in line, not bowing out, but really being in line. And then the right foot slides back. We ground and open to two. Activate the posterior chain just by pressing back into the hamstring. Then we rebend the knee. Hands come together at heart center. We think about the left foot providing the anchor, providing the stability. We know this is a big balance challenge. We sweep the right leg back and we hold that half Karate Kid. And then we release the right leg. Breathe. Sweep the arms up and overhead. Exhale through fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Plant your hands. We'll walk our way back into down dog. Get that depth in your hips. Think about the anterior hip crease, allowing to lift and elevate the hips. And then let's shift forward to plank, and we'll lower ourselves to our belly. Flip the tops of the feet. Flex the quads. Slide the hands behind you onto the sacrum once again. Think about that quad flex. Think about the necessity for glute flex, how the glutes can help counterbalance the quad flex to protect the lumbar. And then think about lifting your forehead maybe 1/8 of an inch off the mat. No more than 1/8 of an inch, right? Very small movement. It does a ton of work on that posterior chain strength, particularly around the lumbar. Let's relax. We'll slide our hands back underneath our forehead for a little crocodile pose. And we'll just breathe, relax, and release here. Be fully at ease with your breath here. We'll give ourselves just 40 more seconds. Cycling into the end of that exhale breath. Maybe one more full inhale. One more deep, full, complete exhale. We'll slide our hands underneath our shoulders, press ourselves to tabletop. On tabletop, let's step our right foot forward and into a grounded version of lunge. Now, I like this. It gives us some nice opportunities. We're going to sweep ourselves into a crescent first, and then from crescent, just drop your hands and interlace behind your spine here. Nice thing is we can put a little bit more expansiveness into this anterior space, which we've already done a great job of opening. The hands can actually help us by guiding the hips forward. We can bow that shoulder girdle open and lift the chin. Looking for really finding an impactful openness across this front hip sheath. And then we'll release the hands. Think about the strength in the left toe mound and flex your way up into a lunge. Lay the toes on the right foot and sweep yourself up into what might be a surprisingly unstable version of crescent. So we have a lot of openness in that left hip, but we're really open, and we really need to think about finding the stability from that right quad, right glute, left hamstring. Put the hands down to the mat, and we'll step the right foot back and into down dog. Sway the hips a little bit here.
And then come down to hands and knees tabletop, flip the tops of the feet, and sink back into child's pose. As you come into this child's pose, pay attention to the potential asymmetry between the left and right hip crease and try to balance that out. So this traveler makes his way up to this door, and it's this massive iron door. And he reaches out, and as his hand grabs the handle, he can feel the weight of the door. And yet, as he pulls it, it glides open silently, like it has been maintained every single day of its existence. And yet, as the door opens, he's hit with this wave of musty, still air. When it feels appropriate, as it feels appropriate, let's pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop. We'll slide the left foot up and in between the hands. Sweep ourselves up into this grounded version of crescent, just kind of a check-in before we drop the hands. And then the hands can interlace, they can rest, but they're on that kind of sacral area. We allow the hips to glide forward, the shoulders to broaden, the chin to lift. And we think about that anterior hip space on the right side, really receiving here. And then we release. Drop the hands, curl that right toe mound and activate the right leg as you lift up to lunge. And then sweep to again what can feel like a very unstable version of crescent. But we get this center body alignment, this elevation, that strength. We think about the left quad, the right hamstring, all helping us make this happen. And we'll drop the hands. Step the left foot back into down dog and sway out the hips a little bit. And then we'll drop to tabletop, flip the tops of the feet, and one more time, find child's pose. We should have a lot of room in child's pose. Almost like we're just collapsing into the shape with the openness at our hip crease. Think about how you can use the core engagement to push the tailbone back and create three-dimensional depth here, not just into the compaction, but into the lengthening as well. And as his eyes start to fix this new lighting, and the sunbeams kind of pour in, you can see that while the air feels perfectly still, there is, as there always is, movement. The convection of air currents circulate the dust through the rays of sunlight. When it feels appropriate for you, let's pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop. And from tabletop, let's curl our toes and lift our seat. Take your left foot behind your right and think about pushing that left big toe mound over towards the right edge of your mat. And then think about the strength in your right arm as you push the weight back into that left hip. Now you have the option here. You can keep that left hand planted. It can slide back and allow for a little more rotation, or you can take that left hand up into a little bit of an additional twist. The goal here, though, is to push into the hip, really anchor that left hip. And then we'll release the left hand, bring the left foot back to its side of the mat, sway out our hips a little bit. And then we'll do the same thing to the second side. So the right foot's going to come across so that the big toe mound of the right foot is roughly up against that left edge. And then we roll back towards that right hip, really thinking about anchoring into that right hip. The right hand can provide stability, or you can take that up. But the key, the focus here is anchoring into the right hip, driving the weight back into that hip. And then we'll roll back to neutral, shift forward to plank, lift the seat into down dog, come up onto our tiptoes, and we'll walk our way forward to the front of the mat, hoping that we have a lot more room than the first time we did this. Dropping the heels and settling into fold. As your head drops into the fold, think again about the anterior hip crease. Yeah, nice, Lisa. Drift your awareness to your sacrum. Let's roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae. Ooh, coming into this top space, bringing our hands together, our heart center, broadening across the shoulder girdle. Breathing. Drift the awareness to the anterior hip crease, and let's retract that back into chair. Really thinking about the hip crease sucking back. And then lift back up into mountain. Drop the hands behind you and interlace the fingers. Broaden across the shoulder girdle. Big, expansive shoulder girdle expansion. Lift the chin. And again, we can allow the hands to guide the sacrum forward if that feels accessible for your lumbar. Head lifts, hips open, really crafting some space here. And then we'll come back to neutral. Sweep the arms up and overhead. Exhale through forward fold. Inhale into half lift. Top of your half lift, think about the crown of the head extending out, getting that spinal column length. Keeping that as you drop back into fold. Planting your hands and walking back into down dog. Coming down to hands and knees tabletop, flipping the tops of the feet and settling back into child's pose. Or what I believe will be the very last time. So really think about depth, relaxing, completing the shape here. We'll give ourselves just 60 more seconds to settle in. Last big inhale here. And a full, complete exhale. And then let's just make our way to tabletop and we'll extend the legs out in front of us. As the legs extend, let's follow them forward into a nice little seated traditional fold.
Quiet mind, like the sunsets fade. Golden thoughts, all the noise just slips away. In the hush of the
Think
dusk,
about how the anterior hip crease can help you expand this fold, how you can
the silent quest.
find more room here.
Underneath the aspen tree, shadows dancing grace. No rushing thoughts to chase, just the calmness I embrace. Breathing in the clarity, breathing out the past. In this moment, nothing's meant to last. Quiet mind, like
Give
the
ourselves
sunsets
60 more
fade.
seconds here.
Golden thoughts, all the noise just slips away. In the hush of the dusk, where the wild sun rests, I find the peace, the silent quest. Gone is the voice that weaves through the crowded days. Hearing the whispers of the silver moon's soft rays. Each star a silent note in the night's deep song. In the quiet, my spirit grows strong. Quiet mind, like the sunsets fade.
When it feels appropriate,
The
we'll
noise just slips
bring
away.
ourselves back to staff and then lower straight onto our back.
Of the dusk, where the wild sun rests, I find a
Ah,
peace,
for the first time.
the silent quest, the silent quest. As dawn paints the sky,
Really feeling your body
a new light, the silence remains, holding me tight.
neutralize here.
Quiet sunrise, with each quiet sun, I'm free in the stillness where my mind has won.
When it feels appropriate, let's allow the knees to bring a little lateral sway. Just settling into some exploratory movement. Letting the knees eventually come back to neutral. The bottoms of the feet come together and the knees fall out wide. Now we've opened up this anterior hip space a lot. So you may find that you are more open than you might be accustomed to or comfortable with. If that's the case, remember you can tuck the hands underneath the lateral edge of the thighs to give a little support. Or if you do happen to have props, you can also tuck those under those lateral edges. Really find ease in your breath here. Think about how we can craft more space. We'll give ourselves just 30 more seconds here. And let's bring our knees back up to neutral. And then we'll let the knees fall over to the left side, settling into a little twist. Just grounding into this first side. And then bringing our knees back to neutral. One last time, letting the bottoms of the feet come together and the knees fall out wide. Last little chance to open up this medial line that we've been so focused on. And so this traveler has found himself in this room. It seems to expand infinitely in all directions. And in each of those directions, rows and rows and rows and rows of books, beautifully bound, perfectly aligned. And he walks down one of the rows and he's running his finger over the spines of the books. And he stops and he pulls one off the shelf. And he begins to read. And very quickly, he's enthralled by the story. He's engaged. Last 15 seconds here. Bring our knees together. And then let both knees fall over to the right. And he's reading this story about this incredible adventure that this woman is on. The caves she's explored and the castles she's visited. And it's maybe a quarter of a way into the book. She's just settled down at a campfire. And the story reads, she reached into her pack. And then it cuts off in the middle of the sentence. And he flips to the next page and it's blank, and the next and it's blank. And he flips all the way to the end of the book. Every page is blank. He thinks that's peculiar. Puts the book back on the shelf, grabs the next book. He opens it up and he kind of starts flipping through it. And sure enough, halfway through, it goes to blank pages. And he goes to the next book. A little over halfway through. The next book. It's like 15% of the book, and it's just blank pages. And they all cut off in the middle of a sentence. Bring our knees back to neutral. And as we anchor ourselves here, we'll ask ourselves if there's anything that we might need, anything that we might want, anything that we could benefit from prior to Shavasana. And if there is, we'll offer that to ourselves. And if we have everything we need, if we're content, if we're ready for stillness, let's find our way into a shape where we can fully and deeply appreciate our version of Shavasana.
So he mutters to himself, almost under his breath. Why would someone keep all of these unfinished books? Why would they have them bound? What is this place? And almost before he finishes the sentence, this librarian steps forward from the shadows with a gentle and kind smile, soft, deep, knowing eyes. Just settling into your version of stillness here. And through that kind smile, the librarian whispered, "These are the stories of the forgotten. The stories of lives that paused, dreams that faltered, of choices that were never made." And the traveler looked back at her confused and said, "But why don't these stories end? Every story deserves an ending, doesn't it?" She said, but the endings are not mine to write. These are stories waiting for someone to live them." Again, the traveler looked back, confused. The librarian, very quietly, very kindly, that every choice you make, every step, every dream, every chase that you pursue or abandon weaves itself into one of these stories. And your life and all lives are the authors of each of these books. With that, this traveler looked around at the seemingly infinite number of untold stories on these shelves. And the weight and the consequence of their choice, of their actions, of their breaths settled in all at once. Let's start to move our fingers and our toes, our wrists and our ankles, our elbows and our knees, shoulders and hips, neck, head, jaw, eyes, tongue. Eventually, the entirety of our body can move. And we can use that movement to realign ourselves back in the seat that we started class. Spine gets tall, breath gets fluid, eyes closed. With your next inhale, let's bring our hands together, heart center. Over the next 7 days and beyond, can you ensure that you provide an ending to every story you wish to tell? See how that impacts your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this evening's practice and for being you. Namaste. Monday, guys. Love the heck out of you. Have a beautiful week. I think we're going to do normal schedule next week. I don't foresee any reason that we wouldn't. So if you don't want to practice, let me know. But I think normal schedule. Love the heck out of you. See you next Sunday for sure. Ah.